or the evening or the morning, wherever you are. For me, it's a huge pleasure to have this possibility to talk to teachers from so many different amazing countries. And I must thank National Geographic for inviting me to do this. So I hope that in the next hour, as we talk about this magic of storytelling, that you will take some ideas back to your classroom, I hope, on Monday morning. So let me start. I'd like to start by outlining just 3 very basic parts of the session today, right? Just for us to get a little idea of what we're going to be listening to and the parts of the session. So the very first part, we'll be talking about where do we start when we want to be a storyteller, when we want to use stories in our class? What's the very best starting point for that? And then I'll be talking about how to set up your classroom. What are the things that you can do to organize your storytelling session so that your students will be active and engaged and focused on what you're trying to do. And then the third part of the session will give you some very clear practical ideas of what you can do as you tell the story. So I'm really hoping, I've got lots of different little bits and pieces around me, so I'm hoping that it's going to be very much fun as well. So let's just start talking about why stories are so fantastic for language learning, and why they're so good for children, I think. Let's have a look. They're the oldest and most powerful teaching and learning method known, right? And it's also the way that humans have communicated since they first made sound. So if we think about that, we'll imagine that the caveman would come back from hunting a mammoth, and he would, in his ooga booga language, he would be telling his family and his wife all about the hunt, you know. And I always say to teachers, you know, when we go into the classroom, we're always telling our students things. And storytelling, if you haven't tried it before, it is like an extension of that, okay? And there's always a style and a way that each individual tells stories too, as you'll see. So stories can improve listening and promote this lovely sense of well-being as we take the students on a journey of inspiration, of curiosity and creativity. It's not a static thing, right? Stories can also reach the subconscious and change behavior patterns, particularly stories that are therapeutic stories. Yeah, stories always have morals to them. They have they tell a lot about life through the images that they bring as well. So they can be very, very helpful to some of our students who feel challenged. And in doing that, they can modify negative behavior and sometimes, we hope, increase concentration. And I think concentration is one of the things that's challenging for a lot of our students these days in the technological technological world that we have, everything being very instant. So it's really lovely that we can share stories with our students to calm them down, to give them focus, and to exchange, you know, the beauty of life, let's say. So stories can uncover hidden talent sometimes. You know, sometimes when you're telling a story, there's that little quiet, shy student right at the back of the class. And as you're telling the story, you see that student and their eyes have gone all bright and shiny, and they've
Lucy, looks like we lost your sound. Do you want to just check on your microphone to make sure you didn't hit that mute button there?
okay.
We can
Anything,
hear
is that
you.
better?
Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So the thing about stories being cross-curricular, could you possibly bring the microphone close to your mouth. Ah, good point. Is that better? So, stories, like you can work together with one of the other teachers in your school, a history teacher, a geography teacher, a science teacher, to bring something that they're studying in a different subject into your language classroom through a story. Yeah. So there are endless possibilities. We can introduce children to folklore and literature. So for those of you teachers who like literature a lot, like poems, and this is something you should always bring your love of words and of books into your classroom for whatever you're going to teach them. And the lovely thing about stories too is that they are inexpensive. We don't necessarily need a book to tell a story. We don't need a computer. We just need ourselves and our voices and our gestures. So, I'd like to invite you to think about a personal story, and I'm going to introduce myself through my simple personal story, in the hope that when I've done that, you will feel that you know me a little bit more. And this is something I love doing with my students, and I can grade it according to the age of the students. But it's lovely when you share a little tiny slice of your life. Okay, so once upon a time, in which country? Who can tell me where they think this country is? Where is it? Where this? In Scotland, yes. Well done, Tiziana. It's in Scotland. Yes, Ryan. Good. Yes, Justin. Exactly. So, in Scotland, there lived a man and his wife, a Scottish man and his wife, and they got married and they went to live in England, and they went to live in this farmhouse in the countryside just outside of London. And here they are, the husband and wife, and you can see that they had two daughters. The first daughter was called Iona, and because the Scottish couple were missing Scotland, they decided to call their daughters after real Scottish islands. So the oldest one is Iona, and the middle one is Gia, and you can see a little picture of their islands. Then, after some years, they had this little person. Not so different. Can you see the likeness? This is me when I was about 7 years old. I've got my school tie on. Yes, it's me. And it's a typical primary school photograph. So these three girls living in this farmhouse had the most amazing childhood, always outside, climbing trees, riding their bikes, running down to the farm. It was lovely. And then they grew up and they had to decide what they wanted to be and what they wanted to do in life. So Lucy, this one, which is me, thought for a long time, what would I like to do that I would love and hopefully be good at? I've got it, she said to herself. I want to be an actress. Yes, perfect job. So where does she need to go to study acting? Which city do you think this is? That's right, Justin. It's London. Yes, everyone. It's London. London is the place where there are a lot of theatres and there are lots of amazing places to study too. So off I went to London and I finished my acting course. It was fantastic. But then I had to get a job, right? And you would think that that would be easy, but it was quite difficult. It took some time. So while I was waiting to get a job as an actress in the theatre, I also worked as a waitress because I had to pay my bills. So one day I'm walking towards the restaurant, and I see this big poster looking for actors and actresses, this theatre company. And I say to myself, very interesting. I think I ought to try an audition for it. So I go, and there are like 200 people. They only need 7 people. So the first day, the 200 goes to 100, then it goes to 50 people. I mean, it's a tough job getting, trying to get work as an actor or an actress in London. But for some amazing, lucky reason, I got into the 7 and I got the job. So I go to the very first day of rehearsal, and there is a Brazilian man, and he's the director. Now, I didn't really know anything about Brazil, really. When I'm telling this story to my students, I usually get some sort of audience participation. So I get half of the audience to be the Brazilians, and I get them to, if I don't have a shaker, I get them to clap out a kind of samba rhythm like this. So I get them to be the Brazilians. On the other side of the audience, I get them to be the English people, like me. And they have to do a little movement and like a little verse, and it goes like this. Excuse me, please. Thank you. Sorry. And this is what English people say a lot. So I get my students involved in my story by these simple sound effects and this little verse. And as I'm telling the story, I ask them to make the Brazilian sound, or I ask them to do the little verse. So one day the Brazilian comes to me and he says, would you like to go to the island where I'm from? It's the island of Florianopolis. So I'm very spontaneous and I say, perfect, wonderful. It can't be that different. British Isles to this tropical Brazilian island. Fantastic. So I pack all my bags, say goodbye to my family, and when I get to the airport, I see my best friend Amanda is there, and she's holding this tiny little box. And inside the box is a present for me. It's a locket. Here it is. A locket is like a little necklace with a little thing that opens. Yeah. Here she had engraved Forever Friends, the 2nd of October 1992, the day I left for my new adventure. So inside was this tiny little piece of paper. Can you see? It's still with me today. And this is what she wrote. Lucy, just sometimes look at the moon and think of me, and you can be sure that I will be looking too and thinking of you. How lovely is that? Obviously, I cried all the way from Heathrow Airport to Brazil. Anyway, I arrived. It was beautiful and hot and tropical, and I had to learn how to speak Portuguese. And before I left London, I had done a teaching certificate as well to teach English as a foreign language. So I decided that I was going to have a little school. I flew to the island, and quite soon I started a little school, the Secret Garden. And when I started teaching children, I've always loved children and teenagers. I've always had this passion for them. So here I am on the veranda telling my students a story. And here I've got students from the 1st grade, 2nd, 3rd and 4th graders. So you can see that stories, one story, depending on what it is and the way you tell it, can reach quite a wide audience. So I also have a picture of my teenagers here to show you. We're down on the beach, which is just down the road from the school. We had gone down there to do some creative writing on the beach. So I'm very, very lucky to have put together, I think, my love for theatre together with my love of working with children and teenagers and coming to a country like Brazil where so many people want to learn English. Here is also a picture of my Brazilian family. This is Emily, the little one is Emily. I can't see the pointer, Emily. Can you help me find it? Oh, here it comes. Great. Thank you very much. So this is Emily, this is Flora, and this is my lovely Brazilian husband. And this is our street doggie. Her name is Lally. We rescued her. And my students usually love to see pets. And you know what? I feel so lucky to have had this crazy biographical journey, if you like, but I can honestly say to you that I think I've found my place in the world. So, there you have it. That's a little slice of my life. And every time that I tell my students this, especially when I'm working with a new group of students, they stop seeing me just as a teacher and they start seeing me like more as a human being. And that can be so powerful when you can get a closer relationship with your students. It feels like I can teach them more because they trust me and they know who I am. So telling your own story is the very best starting point for using stories in the classroom. So do think about it, perhaps a photograph or some object from your childhood or even just a little anecdote. Think about sharing that with your students and you will see their eyes light up with wonder. Because stories make the invisible visible. And like I said before, they're therapeutic and they're so powerful too, right? It's important that we share our experiences with other people. Your story will heal you and your story will heal somebody else. When you tell your story, you free yourself and give other people permission to acknowledge their story. And that is what we want to show our students. We want not only to tell them a story, but we want to empower them to go on and tell their special stories and their ideas and their fantasies. And we want them to be verbal with that, right? So literacy is about being interested in books and what they offer. It's about a confidence that grows according to the way stories and books are offered to the emerging child. So every time you pick up a book, for example, let me just get my favorite one here. Every time you have a book in your hands, treat it with respect because little children, they'll imitate. And if they're very young and early readers, you'll have to teach them how to take care of the book and treat the book with wonder as well. You know, it's something special. It's not just, you know, a load of paper put together in a book. It's much more than that. So I think part of teaching children literacy is starting with your own story and showing them how books are absolutely amazing. Good. So here's the first little question for you. Who told you stories when you were a child? Yeah? Somebody from your family? Was it somebody at school? Maybe somebody didn't get any stories told to them, but still love stories, have heard stories. Let's see. Grannies and grandpas, parents, okay, your mum, your grandmother, especially my dad. Oh, that's so well done for dads who tell their children stories. Kindergarten teacher, you know, you can make a huge difference. If your children in your classroom don't have anybody telling them stories, you could be the one, you know. Your husband, lovely as well. Yeah, and maybe you've listened to stories on the radio, or maybe you've seen stories just on television. Great, but there is a special ingredient, isn't there, when you tell a child like a bedtime story. It's like they go to sleep with something special that night. It is about it's not just about words and the actual story, it's about a gesture of love as well, right? Telling somebody a bedtime story. So here are some of my favorite stories that I loved when I was a child, and I think that when I was writing this webinar, I connected to these stories for various reasons. This one here and this one, these were stories, and this is a book of poems that my mum used to read to us a lot, me and my sisters. So these have a very sort of affectionate connection to them. This one I remember finding in the school library and just loving the illustrations. This one I was given, this one I was given, this one was a sort of teen read, and this one I got from a second-hand bookshop. So books, they really do, they have memories, right? They have affectionate memories. And sometimes these are lovely stories to bring into the classroom too, because you already have a connection to them, yes? Okay, so when I was writing the Look anthologies, I found my story writing book from when I was little, from probably when I was about 7 or 8. So I hadn't really remembered that, but I now think that I've been a writer of stories for very many years now. And it was a huge pleasure to write these anthologies because they're so beautiful inside as well, and they're a lot of what the stories have in them is always a little piece of the writer too. So let's have a look at how we can use stories. But let me just ask you this question. How many of you already use stories in your classroom? Sometimes teachers, you do. Okay, Milo uses them. See, you've got a little poll here that you can answer yes or no to. You've never used stories. Well, that's not a problem, Natalia. I can help you. A little bit? Okay, but yours are adults. Oh, there's some lovely stories around for adults too. Graded readers. Okay, lovely. All right. Some people do and some people don't. Only to my 4 and 5-year-olds. So consider yourself a storyteller and consider the fact that, stories are not just for children, right? They can spread into all sorts of different age groups. Let me talk a little bit about the difference between reading aloud from a book and telling a story, okay? Let's look at some of the benefits because they're both good. So if you're a novice teacher, perhaps reading from a book will give you a little bit more security and confidence. So there's no need to know the story off by heart when you're using a book to read. You don't need to worry about mistakes that you might make in English, because before you bring the book into the classroom, you will have taken it home, read through it a couple of times, make sure you know what the pages are offering. Reading shows that books are also a source of interesting ideas, right? And the pictures in books help understanding. So for your younger students who are learning the skills of literacy, they actually read the story through the images first. So it's another really important thing to take care on the images that you're going to offer your students, right? Okay. I think it's nice to show beautiful images to younger children, so that will be their reference, and save the sort of more cartoon storybook images for students who are already in grade school. You can also watch watching somebody read a book will also be important for some students because they imitate a lot of what adults do. So again, the way you handle the book, the way that you offer the story to the students will have like an everlasting effect on them. And also, as you read a story, you can follow the words, right? So if I was going to take this story, I would drive along animal song. I would use my finger, okay, so that students can see the words and they will be able to hear as I'm saying them. And this very interesting thing happened with my daughters because they were born here in Brazil, so their first language was Portuguese. I always, as a mum, used to tell them bedtime stories in English, and I would often follow the words with my fingers, talk about the pictures. And I remember when Emily was about 5 or 6, she picked up a book in English and just started reading it, and I didn't know that she knew how to read a whole book in English. So a lot of literacy, it happens in a very holistic way as well, right? And also, when you use a book, children perhaps can take that book home, the physical book home, right? Now, storytelling. Sometimes teachers say to me, oh, I can't tell stories like you because you've done drama. And I say, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You just have to find your own individual way, right? So telling stories in storytelling mode, it feels to them like you're giving them something sort of personal and something special. It's because you've been home and you've prepared everything for them and they feel that you've made that special effort for them. And also, it's so important for children these days to experience this group listening, sitting with your colleagues in class, listening to an adult tell a story. It can be very powerful for them. And they need to practice listening, concentration, being calm. And that's one of the challenges for us for using stories in the classroom these days, because children are so active. But I'm hoping to give you some tips, some classroom management tips to help you. So you can use language very creatively when you're in storytelling mode, because you can change the words, you can exaggerate some sounds, you can also use your whole body. We'll show you some ideas about that too. And the lovely thing is also that when you don't have a book in your hand, you're free to really look at the audience and you can see how they're responding to what you're telling them. Okay? Now, how can we prepare our beautiful classroom into this special storytelling place? And I think it's nice when you make it special, different from other parts of your class, right? So some of the things I like to do is I like to get a big piece of paper and measure the door into the classroom. And I've got a little model here that I want to show you. I've made it small so you can see it. But basically, you will cut it into strips. So it's like students can come through the door, right? So this is like, you can put, here it says story time, but you could put the title of your story here. You could put some vocabulary words. You could put once upon a time, happily ever after on the other side, so that you're just saying to the students, this is a special day today. And as they come through, they'll know that something different is going to happen. And magically, you separate the outside world of the school to your inside world of your classroom. I've done that many times and students have helped me make them. It's very effective and not too difficult or expensive to do. You could also have like a storytelling carpet in your room or a little space designated so that you teach your students exactly where to go, where to sit. You make it kind of ceremonious so everything is a little bit more special. Now, I know that some of you might have big classes of like 30, 35 students, but with some little bit of rearranging, you can at least change the format of that classroom by making a horseshoe of chairs or tables. There's always something that you can change in a little way to make it a little bit different, because you want your students to get close to you. When you get them close to you, there's this feeling of intimacy, and the idea of listening is in a sort of closer, smaller space is better for the students as you draw them in to what you're going to tell them. You could also darken the room, which is very nice, which again makes that lovely intimate feeling. In my school, I like to light a candle at the beginning of the story, and then when the story's over, I blow out the candle. You know, when you go to the cinema and you see a really good film, it kind of keeps with you for a while, doesn't it? Well, stories are like that, you know. You want the students to leave that storytelling session with the magic going on inside them. One of the best things to do after storytelling is to get them to draw a part of the story that they liked. And through their drawing, you can see how much they engaged with what you told them. And also we can use some songs and rhymes as well to set up storytelling, to get everybody on the same page, everybody calmed down and focused on what's going to happen next. Okay? What about you? Here's another question, right? Do you use storytelling routines before you read a story? What storytelling routines do you ever use? Because we need lots of different classroom management tasks, I think, and activities. And we have to try out a few things until we find the right one. Sometimes, yes, you do. Always, great. Maybe a warm-up, exactly. maybe stretching, yawning, yeah, something to get everybody together. Pre-teach words as well, that's a very good one, excellent. Let me take you up on that, Katerina, because pre-teaching vocabulary can be very helpful for some students. Let me show you this little verse that I use, which actually helps me to elicit some of the vocabulary that students might see in this story. And I like to use, I have this little puppet here, Sophia. She's got two little legs that are like the fingers from a pair of gloves. She's very sweet. You can see that she hasn't got a very busy face. She's got a very simple face, right? And sometimes I like to use puppets. Here's my king. He doesn't have a face at all. Now, why do you think it's important for preschoolers to have these more simple puppets? Why do you think that? Yeah? Rather than having something exactly Consuelo, they can use their imagination. Exactly right, their imagination. They can imagine themselves as the character. So each child will imagine what the king looks like, and they'll all be different from each other. Yeah? So it's nice to have some materials that are slightly open-ended, if you like, and I'll show you another few things as we go into the next part. But anyway, back to Sophia. So this is a little story rhyme where we can elicit some of the vocabulary from the story. And it goes like this. I make my hand into a tree. There was a little girl climbing up a tree, so high you can see. She jumps from branch to branch, and down she falls. Little bit of drama. Ow, she says, I've hurt my knee. Ouch. And so I get students to kiss her knee or put a band-aid on her knee. And then I brush her off and I say to the students that she is very brave. So what do you think she did? Yes, she climbed again. There was a little girl climbing up a tree, so high you can see. She jumps from branch to branch. Look, what can she see? And then I'll say, what do you think she can see from the top of the tree? And students will come up with ideas like a sky, flowers, trees. So if my story, for example, is on a farmyard, I can elicit some of those words. And Sophia, you can help me, right? Yes. Okay. Moo, moo. Where is Sophia? What can she see? Oh, she can see a cow. What else can she see? It must be a farmyard. What are the other animals that live in the farmyard? And so on and so forth. Yeah? But rather than me just eliciting the vocabulary or teaching the vocabulary, this is already a simple thing that makes the beginning of the story a little bit magical. All right, here is another one now. And basically, it's a very simple poem that you can teach your students and you can use it before storytelling. And it very cleverly gets them sitting down comfortably at the end. And basically, we say the words and do the actions. So it's something like this. Two little feet go tap, tap, tap. Two little hands go clap, clap, clap. One little leap from behind the chair. Two little hands reach high in the air. Two little feet go jump, jump, jump. Two little hands go thumb, thumb, thumb. One little child turns round and round, and one little child sits quietly down. And you can see as well that we need to use our voices too to bring speed, to bring a calmness to the story, to also use our voices for the beginning, the middle, and the end of a lovely story. These are really important instruments as well. While we're talking about instruments, you saw that I had a shaker, But I also have this lovely little chicken whistle, so that I can call my students to story time without using my voice, without shouting or raising my voice. And as I travel around to different places in Brazil and different countries, I find the most amazing things, and I always bring them into story time. This is another very Brazilian one. This is the sound of it. But I also discovered it makes this sound, which sounds to me like a door being opened, okay? So sound effects with very simple things, can help our students into our stories, okay? So whenever you find a little percussion instrument, buy it and take it to your classroom. So I'd like to show you now some of the stories from the anthologies, the Look anthologies, but you can use these ideas with any story that you are using in your classroom right now, okay? So here's the first one. This is a little story about a boy. He's gone for a drive in the car, and he can see lots of different people going by. He can see other children with animals, and it's a very sweet little story song. Yeah, drive, drive, drive along. Come on now, let's sing a song. Off we go, you and me. Sing along, lots to see. So having read the story with the students and looked at the different illustrations, I might use a steering wheel made out of a paper plate or a bit of cardboard, so that my students can be the little boy in the car. And as we read the story, they're driving along as well. So this is lovely for students who aren't quite reading yet, but they understand what's happening and they can follow some of the words. And as we read the story together as a class, they can be a part of it. And this tiny little crafty intervention will keep them focused and will make them feel like, they're really learning too. So really simple things that help us. Okay, let me give you another one. Exactly. Bits and bobs, bits and pieces. Here's another one as well called Toys in the Snow. And I like to use pieces of cloth a lot because cloth is a wonderful thing. It comes in all different shapes and sizes, different colours and textures, and it can represent all sorts of different things, as I will show you. So here we have a story about two kids. They have left their toys out in the garden, and they go out the next morning and everything is covered in snow. So they kind of have to find what's buried there. So when I'm telling this story, I have this big piece of white cloth here. Can you still see me? So I have this big piece of white cloth and I spread it out around me, and I'm always sitting on the floor, and I hide other pieces of cloth that represent the things, the toys that are hidden. So I might have a red train hidden in here. I would have the swish swish. You can see the dog. He is uncovering an orange car, which I could hide as well, and maybe a yellow ball. So I would use the cloth covered in the snow and I would tell the story. And as I'm telling the story, I will uncover, swish, swish, swish. What's this? Oh, it's an orange car. Wow. And little children, they are so open to the possibility of creation that they will see the orange car through the piece of cloth. Yeah. So we would discover the red train and the yellow ball, and then we could have, when the snow melts, a big piece of green cloth that covers the snow as the snow melts away. And really simple like that. Now I've got my microphone caught up in it, but really simple like that, and totally enchanting, right? Do you think that's possible? Could you use a piece of cloth like that? I bet you've got one in your house. Great. You love the ideas. Oh, that's fantastic. Absolutely. Perfect. Yes. So the cloth, the coloured cloth, will represent objects. We don't necessarily have to have the actual object, right? Okay. Now, look at this little girl. This is a story about some children that go to a forest school. And what do you think? You can see what she's doing, right? What do you think she's saying in the speech bubble there? What do you think she's saying? She's got muddy boots. She's probably got a puddle under her. What do you think she's saying? She's saying jumping, exactly. I can jump. And also, using sound effects in a story like this can be amazing. Like, for example, very simple, having the students with a bottle of water making the splishy, splashy, sploshy sounds. As simple as that. Yeah? Splishy, splashy, sploshy sounds. I want to show you one other instrument that I have that makes the sound of thunder and lightning. And it's a little bit like a kind of rain stick idea, but it is like this. It's a drum. It has a hole here and a spring, and it makes the most amazing sound. Listen to this. Yes, so you can use an instrument, and also I can see somebody uses colour tissue paper. Paper is another lovely thing, especially when you've got a big group, that you can, 2 pieces of paper, one in each hand, rub them together to make the sound of the rain, right? So getting your students involved using sound effects, and then getting into the language piece by piece, depending on their talents, depending on their enthusiasm. But you know, it just makes the story come alive, doesn't it? It's so much more interesting for children than just sitting down and turning a page, right? That's the point. All right, let me show you how also we could use some chorus work. I love when we can use the whole class to do things, because we like that. We're not always choosing like the kids who know how to read or the best behaved kids. We're giving everybody a chance, okay? So let's look at how we could use this story in chorus work in the classroom, okay? It's a story called The Little Red Hen. She finds some wheat one day and she says, I can make some bread. And the narrator says, Little Red Hen is busy. Now I would, first of all, look at the pictures with the students. Then I would read the story carefully to them so they knew who the characters were and they could understand the narrative. And then I would ask the students, this is a particularly useful story because it has repetitive language, I would ask them if they could try and identify the repetitive language in the story. Having done that, I would get the whole class to chorus some of the speech bubbles. And as I show you the story, you'll see that we could have half the class could be the little red hen and the other class could be the animals in the story. Okay? So, can you help me, dog? No, sorry, I'm busy. Okay, I can do it. Can you help me, cat? Meow. Sorry, I'm busy. Okay, I can do it. Can you help me, duck? No, sorry, I'm busy. You see, we can use the characteristics of the animals through our voices as well, not too difficult. Okay, says the little red hen, I can do it. My bread is ready. And you can even do a little bit of sound effect for the birds. Yeah, animals talk, don't they? I have fresh bread. Who can help me eat it? I can. I can. Me too. Sorry, no help, no bread. And that is the story of the little red hen. And you'll see as well that a lot of the stories in these anthologies, they have underlying meanings of what we can teach students, life skills, helping others, being empathetic, understanding, sharing. There are lots of different themes that come through the story that are really good for our children as well, not just the language itself, right? You like that one? Yes, developing critical thinking as well. Excellent, exactly. Empathy is huge. There are so many things we need to teach our students these days. We're not just English teachers, right? We're doing so much more. And I do that very willingly, I must say. I feel like I am, helping little human beings go out into the world as strong and caring adults, right? Let me now share a couple of little things I do from level 1. Now, this is also, it's not complicated, it's actually quite simple. The steps are here. What you need is a piece of cloth, a piece of square cloth, about 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, like that. And you fold it so that it looks like a mountain, like here. Okay. And on the top of the mountain, you tie a knot, a very simple knot. Where the snow would be on the mountain, you tie a knot. Now, if I open up these two little pieces of cloth, what have I got here? Doing, doing, doing. Run, rabbit, run, run, run. Yeah, I have a little rabbit. Now, he might not be like this rabbit, but you can be sure that your students will know that he's a rabbit. This one is a ready rabbit, kind of cute as well, but this one is a rabbit that is going to take the student's imagination a little bit further. So, having tested out the rabbit, we take the ears and we push them down into the head. And then you can see here that I'm going to wrap the cloth around my fingers to make a little person. I'll just do that for you now so you can see. There you go. It's a little tiny person. Hello. Hello, 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 hello. I'll just sit down here and I will tell you an amazing little story. Yeah? Something really simple, easy to move. You can use different colours of cloth. You don't have to draw on a face. And this tiny piece of cloth can represent a character perhaps from one of your stories. And giving your students this possibility, you're going to see how amazing it is that they come up with their own ideas as well. So let me tell you another little story that has a puppet that goes with it, exactly as I've just shown you. Now, this is about superheroes, this story. And as you can see from the picture here, it comes with a simple knot puppet. Can you see him here? Just as I showed you before, but I've added a little yellow mask made out of felt and a little star. You know, it took me really, honestly, 5 minutes. And so I would take the story and I would use it with the little puppet. So, something a little bit, whoops, let me see, something a little bit like this. We are all superheroes. I'm a superhero. This is what I've got. A special red cape. It helps me a lot. I've got strong arms. This is so much fun. I've got strong legs to run, run, run. So I can use this puppet to represent one of the superheroes, whoops, from the story. Yeah? And again, once I've done that with my students, I would definitely hand out a piece of red cloth to each one of them and help them do the same. Yeah? Again, it's bringing this magical element into a simple story, and we do it just by using a piece of cloth. So, let me just recap now with you briefly on what we talked about in this last hour, just to refresh your memories and to make sure I've been as clear as possible. So, first of all, you tell your students a personal story about your life through a little photograph or an object. And when you're thinking about a story to tell your students, remember yourself as a child. Did you like stories? How did you receive stories? Yeah? What do you think about books as a teacher? What are your favorite books? How do books and stories make you feel? Choose stories that you know will reverberate very well with your students. You teachers, you know your students better than anybody else, and you will know the best story to choose from them. You might have to practice it a little bit. You might have to change a few things, but you should know your students really well, okay? Prepare your students to listen to the story very carefully by some of those rhymes, some music through the storytelling curtain, whatever ritual that you have set up that you like to do with your students. And it really will help you with classroom management as well. Include props, puppets, chorus work, and sound effects to go with your stories. And I think one of the biggest things that I always remember is to show your love and dedication for education through every story you tell. Yeah? So try your best to bring beautiful stories to your students, practice them, connect to them, and I promise you that they will be everlasting memories in your students' school career, if you like, and they will make a difference to your students, they really will. And definitely they'll open up their minds to reading in a beautiful way, right? Not just a sort of hard academic way, as it were. Okay. So I'd like to leave you with this quote, and I can see we've got another couple of minutes that we could also perhaps answer some questions, but let me leave you with this final quote here. The happy ending in fairy tales is an affirmation of what we know and can accomplish. It's a celebration of what we can become if we listen to the magical voices in our heads. I don't know about you, but I want a happily ever after, yeah? And in wanting a happily ever after, as a teacher, I want to try and do my best. And storytelling is joyful to me, and I try to do my best using that medium. So I hope that some of these ideas that I've shared, you will find them useful and practical, and I hope in some way to have inspired you, especially if you have never used storytelling in the classroom. Just start next week, start tomorrow, just pick up a book and have a go. You will be amazed at some of the things your students will come up with. Great, thank you very much. Thank you. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Lucy. It looks like we have
Hey.
time for one question or so. I did pull one out. I
Sure.
was seeing it asked a few times. It was from Maria.
Yes.
How do you encourage children to take away their tablets and phones? That was one.
Well, I actually, in my school, I'm kind of strict, really. There's not a lot of encouraging. There are rules that we have, and let me talk a little bit about the sort of slightly older children, because in my reality, it's the older children who have that technology. Let's say from 9, 10, 11, 12 upwards. My preschoolers, they don't really have that technology here in Brazil. I think it's fantastic when they don't because it's like their childhood is a little bit protected from that. But what I do is I have this beautiful basket and I invite my preteens to put their phones into the basket. We do use technology in our classroom, but we also need time to disconnect and we need time just to be. And I can tell you, even with the teenagers, the moments that they are without their mobile phones, there's a completely different connection going on. There's more eye-to-eye contact. There's more exchanging of information and ideas. It's it's lovely to be without that technology sometimes, right? So I am quite strict in my school, and I have this with the team of the teachers that I work with. We take them away, and then we give them back to them after class or at the end of school. No problem, no problem.
Great. So just one final question here from Melody.
Sure.
How long does it take typically to tell a story in class?
Well, this is very relative, really, because a story can be anything from like 5 minutes to 15 to 20 minutes. It depends on how much time uh, that you have. Perhaps you've got a lot of content and you've got to use your course book and you really don't have a lot of time. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't have a very, very simple story that has a very simple beginning, middle, and an end that you can easily tell in 5 minutes. The time it takes for you to do a warm-up is the same amount of time that you could have a simple story, right? So I think that's a really good question, and it's very relative because we all have a diverse teaching situations, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Lovely messages. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Lucy, for this great webinar. It was so interactive, and I really hope you all, like Lucy said, took something away that you can use in your classroom tomorrow or next week with your young learners of English. Great. And just so you all know,
Yeah.
Lucy is actually on our author team for Look. She's wrote the Look anthologies. There are 6 anthology stories for every level of Look. Each anthology, excuse me, has 6 stories in them. And there's also activities to check comprehension in there too. And Look is the new National Geographic learning series for young learners of English, and it's a 7-level series. And I'm just going to put this URL in here now so you can find out a little bit more about it if you're interested. We will send you an email with the slides, the recording, a certificate, as well as some links to find out a little bit more about Look. So great. Wonderful. And just last but
Great.
not least, I'd love to invite all of you to participate in Learning Moments, which is a photography showcase that we're running for teachers of English. We're asking for you to have some fun and take photos of everyday life where you are, and then let us know how you would use this photo in your classroom. I'll put the URL here, but we'll be sending on some information about it, and we're running it throughout the month of October. So we'd love for you to take part. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thanks once again, Emily, for your help and support bringing this webinar to everybody. It's been a huge pleasure. I feel very privileged to be able to share these ideas with so many amazing teachers. So once again, a deep thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you too. And Valentina, yes, you will be getting a certificate that will be emailed to you in about 3 to 5 business days. So thanks again, everyone, for giving us an hour of your day and spending it with us. And thank you, Lucy. I'm going to send you all to a feedback survey now. If you have a little bit of time, we'd love to hear
Wonderful.
your responses.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Excellent.